So I've played Torchlight Infinite for about 250 hours in the open beta so far, and there are a number of things that I've noticed that are just straight up broken inside of the game. There's also a number of things that are they just don't work, or they don't work as intended, or bugged. There's also a lot of performance issues, things of that nature. And I just kind of wanted to go into the specifics of those and just highlight some of the most glaring issues with the game that I think actively make the game worse and going into Season 2 should absolutely be fixed. So this is in no particular order, but number one is going to be, please just let us use multiple gods slash statues inside of maps at the same time. There's been dozens and dozens of times where I picked up a God of War in the beginning of a map, and then I just had to skip God of Machines or God of Might or even God of Hunting that was just placed in the middle of the map, because you can't pick both of them up at the same time, and there's no reason for that. It literally just wastes time for no reason, because you have to go back, after your God of War has ended, for example, go back halfway through the map and pick up the other statues. And I think it just feels bad, and I cannot think of a single reason why this should be in the game. So I initially wasn't gonna put bugs on this list because I feel like it's kind of evident that those absolutely do need to be fixed, but there's one bug in the game in particular that feels horrible, and that is the bug where monsters just straight up don't take damage. And I think this is extremely disruptive to the game. This bug usually happens whenever monsters spawn near strange terrain, or sometimes they even spawn inside of terrain, or there's a large group of rare monsters that spawn on top of each other, and it just causes them to not take damage whatsoever from hits, and I think it's just horrible, because you have to leave all those monsters behind because you just can't kill them. Number three is going to be the search function in the game. The search function is just straight up broken. So I have here pulled up the strength helmet, for example, and let's say I want to look for erosion res. It doesn't come up, even though it is a mod that is able to be rolled on the item. And for items such as, just a regular helmet, this is not that big of a deal because there's not that many mods. So you're not spending that much time looking through these mods individually because they don't have that many mods on them. I think this issue is infinitely worse whenever you're looking at legendary items such as an infinity, for example. So I have the infinity selected here, and then if I wanted to look for one of those keystone mods, for example, trade-off. So let's say I search for trade-off, it doesn't show up, even though trade-off can roll on the item. In fact, none of these mods. So if I wanted to look for close range fire, we know that that can roll on the item, and it doesn't show up. So I think this search function just makes finding items that you actually need take way longer than it really should, and I think this is something that in a game that has free trade, this should be fixed. It should have been fixed 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I don't understand why it still has not been fixed. Number four is going to be fixing the UI. There's plenty of things about the UI that are scuffed, but most notably for me personally, it's the size of the UI that really bothers me, because for example, when I'm mapping, I click on the map all of the time and it just brings this up, and there's a high chance that while I'm trying to get out of this, I die. Or for example, this bottom part here, the abilities and the health bar and mana pool, it's way too big. This should be about a third of the size. So I think one way to solve this would be they should let you overlay your map to the middle of the screen, kind of like how PoE does it, and then just let you lower the size of the actual UI at the bottom. I think the UI at the top doesn't really matter as much. For me, the main annoyance is the UI at the bottom. Up at number 5 is going to be the 50 character limit on the chat. Now this is not something that's a huge thing, but I think when you're looking at, the game is going to have a multitude of multiplayer aspects to it in the future. I think this is going to be a huge restraint on player interactions moving forward. And you can already see this with people, splitting up their messages into multiple different messages, and I think it's just kind of awkward. And I don't see a reason why the limit has to be 50. Maybe increase it to 100, 150. I think that would be a lot more healthy. So up at number 6, we need a better way for us to share our builds and for us to really look into what other people are doing with their builds. Because as of right now, the only way to really do that is to make an in-depth guide for YouTube, or to literally screenshot every single aspect of your build. And I just don't think that's good. I think there needs to be something like what Path of Exile has. PoE has PoE Ninja, PoE has Path of Building. Now I understand that these are external tools, but I think this is something that could be, integrated into the hero ranking system that we have in the game. But yeah, I think this is something that limits player creativity. For example, people are just more reluctant to try builds because they are not really sure, what the numbers really look like, because the numbers that we have in the game, the damage and the survivability numbers, are just kind of scuffed at it, and they don't really tell you anything about the build. Now, the best thing that we have, the closest thing that we have to that, is this website called Torchlight Helper. Now what this does is you can actually look at all the different skills, bases, legendary items, and talents, and so you can kind of theory craft with this. And then you can also create a build, so you can go in here and you can add the different skills to it, and then you can actually share this to other people. I've seen some people share their builds on here, and I might start doing this too. I think this is a tremendous tool that, if expanded on, this could be really useful for people to discover new things in the game. Now up at number 7, we have the difference in monster counts inside of the actual maps. Now I understand that PoE does this too, for example, based on the size of the map. So the larger maps typically, they take longer, therefore they have more monsters in them. And it's the same in this game. The larger maps typically have more monsters more often than not. But I think the reason this doesn't work in this game is because in PoE you are not playing the game in 5 maps at a time. You're playing the game 1 map at a time. And what I mean by that is you have a lot more control over which maps you're actually doing in PoE compared to Torchlight Infinite, because in Torchlight you're forced to do the maps that have the right cards on them, right? And so it just feels bad when you have a good card setup but you don't have the right map, so you're getting like 200 monsters on the juice map, and now you just wasted all your currency and you're wasted a good setup in terms of your cards. So I think this is something that they need to look into. They need to normalize this. And if you want to learn more about this, actually, as I said, I made a video about it. I'll have that in the description, so if you're interested, just check it out. Now the game also has massive performance issues. I've typically only noticed this once I have the game open for about 2+ hours. The game really starts to slow down once you have it open for a while, and it typically gets fixed more often than not if I just restart the game, or sometimes I would even have to restart my computer. But I don't think that the game is well optimized, to be honest. Now I don't know anything about game design and optimization, but a lot of other games that I play flawlessly on my computer, and I have a 3070 Ti, so there should really be no reason as to why a mobile game is running at 10 to 15 FPS. And I think this is something that a lot of other people have complained about, and from what I heard, they are working on fixing this, but I just kind of wanted to mention it anyways. Up at number 9, I wanted to mention everybody's best friend, the target dummy, and more specifically the fact that the target dummy can only tank up to 100 million DPS. I have no idea why this is the case in a game where you have endgame builds going up to billions and billions of DPS, but it is the case, and I think it absolutely needs to change, because once you get to high gear on most builds, it becomes incredibly difficult to know, okay, is this item an upgrade? Is this item a downgrade? Do I need more crit rating, or do I need more crit damage? Do I need more attack speed, or do I need, other stats that increase my DPS? And I think it's really hard to determine this when you cannot see your DPS accurately above 100 million. Now this last thing might not be the case with everybody, but I think if the developers want to retain and actually get new players to play the game, they need to increase the early game difficulty. I've read so many reviews on Steam complaining about how easy the game is and just how boring it is because you're just one-tapping every monster, you're blowing up screens, you know, in the early game. And the game really doesn't get hard until T7 anyways. You can play pretty much any build and you'll blow through tier 1 through 6, and especially, you know, the early game or the campaign. So, you know, this is a huge problem because people are getting turned away from the game because they just aren't stimulated at all and they just get bored before they even get to the good part. Yep, that's it. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitch. Link in description. Peace.